From the start, don't play dumb, acting like you didn't see where I'm from. But every move I made, I was meant to shine. You can try to act blind, but you saw the signs. I rose from the dirt, stayed on my grind. Now they're looking at me like, damn, she divine. You knew I was the one, don't pretend. Played stupid, but you felt it in the end. I see the way you looking now, switching sides. But you can't erase the truth, don't even try. You knew I had it, you knew I'd fly. Now you gotta watch me as I touch the sky. You knew, don't act brand new. You saw the vision, you felt it too. Played stupid, now you see it's true. I'm the chosen one, I always flew. You knew, don't act brand new. You felt the power, but you stayed mute. Now it's too late, I made my move. I'm the chosen one, you knew the truth. Every word I spoke, it hit deep. They acted like they didn't see the queen beneath. But I stayed focused, never let it slide. I kept pushing while they tried to hide. Now they trying to get close, wanna claim me. But where was the love when they couldn't see? I was destined to rise, you always knew. But you kept it low, now look at my view. I see the way you looking now, switching sides. But you can't erase the truth, don't even try. You knew I had it, you knew I'd fly. Now you gotta watch me as I touch the sky. You knew, don't act brand new. You saw the vision, you felt it too. Played stupid, now you see it's true. I'm the chosen one, I always flew. You knew, don't act brand new. You felt the power, but you stayed mute. Now it's too late, I made my move. I'm the chosen one, you knew the truth. They wanna act like it's all a surprise, but you saw the fire burning in my eyes. Don't act shocked, don't fake the vibe. You knew I was coming for my prize. Now I'm standing at the top, looking down. You can't deny it, I wear the crown. All the fake love, it's come around. But you knew I'd take over this town. You knew, don't act brand new. You saw the vision, you felt it too. Played stupid, now you see it's true. I'm the chosen one, I always flew. You knew, don't act brand new. You felt the power, but you stayed mute. Now it's too late, I made my move. I'm the chosen one, you knew the truth.
Earlier was just south of Sarasota, and now that center line is up here along the southern portions of Tampa Bay. And the reason that's so important, we've been saying all along, is because if this line goes north up into Pinellas County here, that storm surge at landfall will rush incredibly fast through Tampa Bay and be extremely destructive to thousands of properties. Now we're mostly focused on those properties south here of Sarasota down to Venice, down to, a little bit in Port Charlotte and Fort Myers, but not the brunt of it. Not like we're going to see up here northwards from Venice up to Sarasota. Then we take it just south of I-4 as a Category 1 hurricane in the middle of the night. This is torrential rain from Tampa to Orlando. Wind damage also in those areas. A lot of trees. You're going to have power out in some spots for over a week, I'm sure. Our computer lines, they're still south of this, but look where our storm is. They're north of those lines, Hallie. That was because of that wobble that we saw in the last couple hours. And the biggest impacts is going to be the storm surge changes. Now we're looking at about 9 to 13 feet. We're no longer saying that 10 to 15. That's because we knocked those winds down a little bit to Category 3 instead of Category 4. But a 9 to 13 foot storm surge in this zone is still very problematic. So again, we're in the last couple hours here. I know everyone in the Tampa Bay area is holding their breath. It's a very close call.
Bill, I want you to stand by for 1 second, because on the right side of the screen, we're showing live pictures coming in from some of those cameras that are posted up across the region. That's Tampa Bay on the upper right-hand side of your screen. Just below it earlier, you might have seen the pictures coming out of St. Pete, where you saw people had pulled up in an SUV. They switched the driver and the passenger as they were looking to drive along, presumably to get out of Dodge, essentially. Bill, the tornado factor has been one that has developed in a big way today. Can you talk through that as we're taking a live look here at St. Pete?
Yeah, this has been prolific at producing tornadoes during the day. We've had some big storms, too. And what we're looking at here, this is north of the center, so the wind is blowing offshore, and that's why the water levels are not that high. It's like an anti-surge. Right now, the wind is being blown out of Tampa Bay and away from St. Petersburg. That's why you're not seeing any water there on the streets. I've already seen reports from Naples and up towards the Fort Myers area. We're now in minor, heading towards moderate flood stage because the storm surge is up about 3 or 4 feet in those areas, and it's coming in. That's what will eventually this evening come up the coast. I know you asked about the tornadoes. Last count I saw was 13 tornadoes reported. You can see them dotting the map, 2 of them near Fort Myers. We had a lot near Lake Okeechobee in between West Palm and up to Vero Beach. And even at this hour, we currently have at least 1, 2, 3 tornado warnings near Fort Pierce and Jupiter. So, these tornadoes, I haven't seen, Hallie, like, structures destroyed. I haven't really seen many reports of a lot of damage. So this is going to kind of take a little backseat because now that storm surge is about to do extreme damage to houses and businesses as this eye moves closer to shore.
Bill Cairns, I know you're standing by and will be throughout the night here with us. Thank you very much. We're going to get back to you in a minute, but let me bring in Keith Turry now, FEMA's Acting Associate Administrator in the Office of Response and Recovery. Thank you for being with us. I know that it is all hands on deck for you tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to be here.
Let me pick up where Bill Cairns, our meteorologist, just left off on those tornadoes that we've seen all across the state. How does that add to the challenge now that FEMA faces moving forward?
Yeah, this storm's going to bring a range of hazards, as you just heard. Obviously, we have the storm surge as one of the most primary life-threatening threats, but we also have those tornadoes that have been happening throughout the course of the day and are going to continue to happen. And the rainfall is going to create significant risk for flash flooding, but also riverine flooding, as those rivers are going to fill up and the water is not going to have anywhere to go. And so we've been saying all day, our partners at the National Weather Service have been saying all day to take this storm very, very seriously, and it includes that whole range of threats that you're going to see across the entire peninsula.
As we take a live look now on the left-hand side of our screens at Tampa Bay, do you believe that people are, in fact, taking this seriously? Do you have reason to believe that folks have heeded those warnings?
Yeah, that's what we've been seeing is that there have been, the folks have been taking it seriously. They have been evacuating. Of course, there's always a few that don't do that, and we will work with our partners to get that message out as long as we possibly can to hope that they will take that action. At this point, as you mentioned, it's probably too late. You need to stay in place at this point. But in general, I think people have heeded the warnings. But, obviously, we don't want to lose a single life if we don't have to. And so we'll keep pushing on that as long as we can.
I know that even for folks who are outside that immediate cone of as far as direct impact from Milton, one of the big concerns is power outages and the possibility of extended power outages. People bracing against that. That comes with concern over carbon monoxide, because of these gas and diesel powered generators that people use instead. We saw after Helene, according to America's Poison Centers, there was a rise in carbon monoxide exposure. How much of a concern is that for you right now, and what is your warning to folks on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most people don't realize that many of the risks that come from these hurricanes comes in the hours and days after the storm passes. And so right now we're focused on the risk of the actual surge, but in the days ahead, there's going to be down power lines to watch out for, floodwaters to make sure you don't walk through or drive through. People are going to have power outages, make sure that you're using flashlights. And if you have those generators, like you just said, they need to be 20 feet or more away from your home. And so this safety message is going to continue for a number of days, and that's still going to be the priority even after the storm clears.
Let me just ask you this. We know that the FEMA director, your boss, basically, has said the agency has the money to get through now to respond to both Helene and to Milton here. Is FEMA ready for what's to come from Milton? And do you need more money? Should Congress come back into session and give additional resources to FEMA?
Yeah, we have all the resources we need, both financial and from a personnel perspective, to respond to both Helene and to Milton. We have got the ability to spend the funding in our fiscal year 25 budget. That is enough money for us right now. No one needs to be worried about FEMA not having enough resources. And we have pre-positioned and prepared for this. We plan for multiple hurricanes in a year. It's not a surprise to have multiple hurricanes hitting. It's unfortunate. It's difficult, but we're ready for it. We'll work with our state and local partners to respond.
Keith Turry, I know you got to go. Thank you for spending some time with us here. Appreciate that. Let me go to Sam Brock now, who's live for us in Fort Myers. This is one of the places we actually showed you earlier. An apparent tornado had blown through. Sam, what's the situation on the ground here as we're showing viewers again those heavy winds just like ripping down the street in the area where you are?
Yeah. It's just started to pick up. But yeah, earlier, absolutely, Hallie, tornadic activity, certainly by all appearances. That's what we saw. Let me walk you through that. Around 11:30, 12 o'clock today, a flurry of tornado warnings started to come through, going off. You know exactly what that high-pitched sound means. You look at your phone. I was at our hotel, actually, which is about 10 or 15 minutes from downtown. Everyone was scurrying about trying to get inside the hotel. Later, our producer capturing some of these images. Not far from there, you have on Colonial Boulevard. It's one of the main strips through Fort Myers of trees that have been splintered and really create a path, much the same in terms of a footprint of a tornado you would expect to see. Metal that had been bended and wrapped around poles. Lots of folks that had close calls. We have not heard anything so far in terms of injuries, but that did really pop up early. It's not surprising that on the southeastern side of this system, we would see tornadoes, but no one was really expecting it so early this morning. Haven't had any since then, but we are starting to see some of the activity in terms of rain and wind really pick up.
Obviously, you're on the outer band of those cities that need to be on highest alert for the potential for a lot of storm surge coming in, especially as you heard that latest track from Bill Cairns here. An 8 to 12-foot storm surge, what does that look like where you are, especially 2 years after Hurricane Ian that blasted Lee County and Fort Myers head on?
Okay, this is the most important point to make. I think those two words together, storm surge, are like immediately traumatizing for anyone that lives around here. Behind me, this is the Caloosahatchee River. All right, the high tide, Hallie, is not until 8:15 tomorrow morning. The river already, and this connects Fort Myers with North Fort Myers, is basically at ground level as we speak. You see that gazebo in the middle of that island out there? That's sitting at about street level. Look where the water is right now. It's only coming up many, many feet. According to our weather folks, we talked to them, the projections for 8 to 12 feet still stand. Now, where we are right now, this is inland, and it is in an evacuation zone. But when you go way farther west, maybe 10 or 15 miles, those barrier islands that sound so familiar and evocative, we're talking about Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel Island, Gasparilla Island, Pine Island. They were decimated 2 years ago by Hurricane Ian. Now, that was more of a wind event as well, but the storm surge created so much havoc, 150 or so deaths related to Ian. Half of them were in Lee County, and you will remember those images, Hallie, of boats. I mean, yachts, commercial boats that were floating above electric towers and just sort of careening their way through the streets of Fort Myers Beach. All of that happened. You know, I remember walking around the blocks and blocks of devastated homes that were just piles of rubble and iron and metal and like 8-foot-high sand dunes. That's the concern right now. If there's any good news in all of this, Hurricane Helene a couple of weeks ago definitely scared some folks there. They got, I think, 6 feet of storm surge. Water was in their home. Sewage in some cases was inside their homes. They're rebuilding these houses and now got to go, in some cases, back to ground zero or square one. Not a good situation at all. But the shelter scenario right now, 7,000 people in this county roughly are in shelters at last checkup, from 1,600 yesterday. So at least people appear to be taking the lesson.
That's right. Yeah, some of those shelters even filling up. Sam, really quickly before we let you go, just because I think people are interested in this and they want to know, you are also, and our crew, making precautions to be safe when this storm comes ashore, right?
100%. We are right near a parking garage, which has 5 or 6 levels. There would be nowhere close to any storm surge. It's not really going to be a wind event. Where we are standing right now, we are 2 minutes away from that. In no way are we in harm's way.
Sam Brock, thank you very much. Let me bring in Jesse Kirsch, who's live for us in Sarasota now. And Jesse, this is the city that would be closest to landfall, though you saw that track now with Milton expected to go just slightly north. That means you are looking, you heard Sam talk about a big storm surge, you are looking at a potentially huge storm surge, 10 to 15 feet. Think about 15 feet, that's like the first story of a house. I mean, just to give people some perspective there, look around your house, right? That's like ceiling height, generally. It seems like the weather's been coming in waves. It's remarkable to look at the scene behind you now, because it's going to look a heck of a lot different in about 5 hours.
Building over there in Florida.
Yeah, and Hallie, when you talk about the storm surge potential here, especially with that slight track north, the right side of the storm is typically where we see the strongest winds, the strongest storm surge, the highest storm surge. We're looking at potentially 13 feet. That's like having multiple people stacked on top of each other. The reality is, if you are caught in that storm surge, your likelihood of being able to survive it is very, very slim, if not entirely impossible. And I want to go back to where Sam is right now for a moment, Fort Myers area. I just connected with someone yesterday who I met in the aftermath of Hurricane Ian down there more than 2 years ago, and she told me she still is not back in her home from that storm more than 2 years ago. And now this whole area is potentially getting rocked by yet another storm here in Sarasota. They have been calling for evacuations, as they have in many other areas. We've had intermittent bouts of heavier rain, higher winds, but right now it's relatively calm out here. Right over my shoulder, beyond those buildings, you can see that is Sarasota Bay. And so when that water rushes in, we could potentially see it flooding streets. It just took a couple hours of rain for us to see flooding here already, Hallie, today. Thankfully, that flooding, I'm checking right behind me, several stories down, but that flooding has receded for the time being in the streets. But, you know, that's just from some rain, not to mention the onslaught of storm surge, which we are potentially expecting here.
Yeah. Jesse Kirsch, live for us in Sarasota. Thank you. Let me go now to this theme we've been talking about, right? The issue of Helene and now Milton, right? Milton right on top of another big storm less than 2 weeks ago. And we're hearing some of the stories of people who already lost everything in Helene, now worried about how much worse it could get. Here's our Priscilla Thompson talking with somebody who left their home in St. Pete to head to Orlando ahead of Helene 10 days ago. Watch.
You're really kind of numb. You're really just kind of numb. We've all been in shock. Just your adrenaline just takes over. We've been through a lot of suffering, so I think we understand suffering in just such different ways, and I know that we get through it.
So Marissa Parr is just north of St. Pete out in Tampa for us tonight. And Marissa, you look at the situation there, at least 4 shelters are already at capacity in the Tampa Bay area. Presumably a good sign, right? It means people have left those mandatory evacuation zones and they found safer areas. You've got highways, multiple highways closed to traffic here. Flooding has already started. If people haven't left already, it is too late now,
This
right?
was earlier, now this is...
Correct, Hallie. The idea being, and you can see the conditions behind me, they are deteriorating very quickly.
Storm surge than you saw just a couple weeks ago during Helene. With that in mind, what, if anything, is different about how you're getting ready for Milton? And is your advice to people now just to, if they haven't left, stay where they are?
Yes, we've been for the last 48 hours urging people, if they're in evac zones A, B, or C, to evacuate, whether it's in the city, in the county, or to leave the county altogether. And I think folks have been really responsive. The call for evacuation is about half
places a little further north or even south of you, Jesse, maybe 15 feet. That's the first story of a house. I mean, just to give people some perspective there,
Yeah, you're
that is
climbing
a
upstairs
huge
at that
amount of
point,
water.
and you're hoping you're going to be okay. Yeah, you're climbing
100%.
upstairs, you're hoping you're going to be okay, and you're hoping, frankly, your home is not going to be ripped off its foundation, because we know in the last 2 weeks we've seen it both, from the aftermath of a hurricane and also the flooding that came with it way to the north in North Carolina. We know what rushing water can do in any number of forms.
Per foot of water coming off of this road, making it to that storm drain, but the water is already starting to pool, and we are not even yet in the worst of it. And so folks here say that they have been preparing, they are prepared. We've seen sandbagging and all of those things, but they are still worried. I talked
Impact on the ground.
Yeah, especially the sort of the angle that the storm is going at is also going to make a big difference, because if it's kind of going parallel to the coast, Hallie, and then takes a little bit of wobble right to the right, all of a sudden now you've got.
And I used our zoomed-in NextRad radar. It's a much better view of the actual center of the circulation. And you can see it there, only roughly about 20 to 30 miles off the coast of Sarasota. So when that comes on shore, the center, that's when we'll be talking about the landfall. But if you notice that bright pink and red just to the north of that, this is where the torrential rain is. This is all through St. Petersburg, the Tampa. And this is where this helps mix down the wind. And so this is going to be the strongest wind gust over the next 3 hours here for Clearwater, St. Petersburg, Bradenton, northwards. And you notice some of the light green around Bradenton. You're closest to the eye and getting into the clear. So that's why Tampa, you may never get into the clear. The good news for the Tampa Bay area is, I feel safe to say now, you are going to get the storm surge blowing out. You are not going to have that destructive storm surge. This is going to make landfall south of you. So for everyone that was so concerned about that potential for water up to the first floor of homes in Tampa Bay, that looks highly, highly unlikely at this point with that landfall to your south. So anyone that has evacuated family, friends that were so concerned about their properties all along Tampa Bay and Clearwater Beach, Pinellas County, St. Petersburg, you're not going to get that destructive storm surge. To the south
problem
of
is,
there
Bill,
is. Yeah, go
exactly.
ahead.
Exactly. I was just
all
saying exactly what
riled
you
up
said.
and
Like,
then
okay,
it's
it's not going to hit
like
those folks,
that.
but it will have an impact further south, where those people will see that storm surge up to the first floor.
Yeah, correct. So if you notice, I have the wind field up here, by the way, and that bright red circle in the center, that's where the hurricane gusts are going to be. That's now approaching the coast. So at this point, the yellow shows tropical storm gusts, which, by the way, go from Miami northwards. I want to show you, this is kind of a new thing we've done the last couple of years from NOAA. They actually drop what we call a sail drone. Obviously, it floats on the surface of the water. It stays upright somehow with its cameras. Amazing technology. It's close enough to the coast that we can get the signal back from it. This was not in the eye. This was about 50 miles from the center of it. It reported 28-foot waves.
Crazy,
Tom Yab is
right?
live in Sarasota, Florida tonight. On the ground there, I do want to bring in Marissa Parra tonight. Marissa, talk to us about.
I'm trying to see.
All right, Priscilla Thompson first. Priscilla, we appreciate that. We are now less than a couple of hours away from when we expect this storm. Do you regret it all not evacuating, or do you think you're going to be fine?
This was
I don't regret it. I really trust the system. I know that there were plans set in place ahead of time.
Our live coverage from Sarasota continues. Here's a live look at St. Pete Beach getting hammered by wind and torrential rains, and the shocking video coming in as the hurricane.
A couple of hours ago.
Really didn't happen. So yeah, I think right now.
Winds, we start to pull everybody back, but we also get the input from our supervisors and commanders that are out there on the road. So if they deem that the conditions are too unsafe for us to remain out there on the road and start responding to calls, we pull everybody back in. And that's just what we had to do, because we had sustained winds that were well over 45 miles an hour, and we're still seeing that now.
Did you realize, I know we were talking about this earlier, Sheriff Prommel, the fact that there might have been the perception among some of these parts of the West Coast, Southwest Florida, that the storm wasn't going to really be as damaging here versus the Tampa Bay area. But at any point, did you let your guard down, or did you feel like...
Control room is speaking with me. Where was landfall? Was it over Sarasota? We were expecting the eye to go over Sarasota.
I'm in a concrete block building, so
it's already
the building getting hurt. Certainly.
You're not in an evacuation zone. Talk to me about the decision not to get out anyway, because you might be.
Which is going right through the center of the storm. So pretty incredible stuff, and this rainfall is really problematic. Just to update the power outage numbers, now at 750,000 people without power. The extreme wind warning continues for all areas north of Sarasota with that heavy rain and that wind. That's where we're seeing the gusts, Bradenton, 96-mile-per-hour gusts. So that's why the power is going out so quickly. We've had an unconfirmed report of a storm surge south of Sarasota of 10 feet. Down to Naples, around 5 feet. So that everywhere in between here, roughly about 5 feet to 10 feet is the range that we're getting. That's what we were expecting, and it looks like it's happening. No problems with storm surge in Tampa Bay. Here's some of our latest wind gusts: 71 in Brooksville. Even Orlando now is up into the 50s. Punta Gorda 79, now 72. St. Petersburg just with a gust up to 90. Tampa to 82. So those are the wind gusts that you see Marissa out there in.
Bit of good news for Tampa Bay with those negative storm surge.
Already very destructive and potentially deadly storm. Tom?
Okay, Priscilla Thompson first.
predicted with this particular landfall are unfolding. You can see it in some of the footage ahead of this segment. So let's start first with the heavy rain. So the heavy rain is along and to the north of where the center is tracking. That is placing that heavy rain and that flat.
In Tampa, even inland for Winter Haven and Orlando, over 50 miles per hour.
Wow, that is a
I'm
live
gonna
look
we didn't
right
want to take
now.
any chances there. Okay, we just want to move inside. Yeah, we didn't want to take any chances at that point, Gotti. It obviously turned
Gotta
very
be
fast.
careful of that debris
There were a lot of
flying
cars,
around.
there were a lot of people that were out, trying to see what the hurricane felt like and looked like because we were in the eye. And again, it was within minutes, it completely changed. This storm surge is coming in so fast. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this. I've covered a lot of hurricanes. This has definitely been the strongest one I've covered this season so far. But look at that. I don't know if you can tell.
Safety, right? We've got these walls that can keep us grounded and protected in a way that we wouldn't normally think about because of the concern about all that debris that's out there, Tom. And all of that potentially, I think, might be funneling the wind through here in a way to make it, flying past us more quickly. But we're looking in all directions. We've got our team's eyes in every direction up here because we do not know what is out there. And we heard, the sound of that debris skidding across that blacktop over there really was chilling, Tom.
Jesse, it's interesting. I'm looking at these palm trees that are just behind us, right? They would be to your left if you're looking at the camera. They're getting absolutely shredded right now. And these palm trees are so interesting. They survive these storms because they're perfectly round and their roots get stronger as they bend. But the tops of them, those palm fronds, are completely getting shredded. And it takes a lot of hurricane wind. I'm going to have George back up a little bit because we're getting some debris that's kind of flying a little too close for comfort here. Most of it's leaves and stuff like that, but I'm just looking out for people, as you are, Jesse, too. The thing that I can't get over, though, is the storm surge. It is moving fast. It's almost taken over the first floor completely, the first story of that parking garage. And we're just getting started here, right? We have another 1, 2, 3 hours of this type of intensity.
Yeah, and again, Tom, going back to the palm trees for a moment, those are not light, feathery leaves. Those are pretty sturdy and essentially like giant pieces of plywood. And in fact, in Hurricane Helene, when that was making landfall, a tiny piece of debris, for one, appeared to have hit me, and that actually sent our team back inside to safety. And I can tell you, it's not like getting hit with a leaf off of a typical tree. So the fact that those things are being snapped off and just shredded, like you were describing, just speaks to the ferocity of this wind.
That's faster than a daggone car goes.
From where I am right now on a barrier island just up.
And we've got, of course, the potential for those damaging, destructive winds with that eye wall working through these regions. So here's some of the rain that we're seeing right now. Notice the purple, the pinks,
has almost all of the different organizations that power our city. And
thunder, and then immediately all of the lights in the room that we were in went out. All of our lights out here went out, and so we were running fully on batteries. And now there are more than 1 million people across the state.
And I'm not talking about Fort Myers Beach, which of course had that horrific experience with Hurricane Ian a couple of years ago. That's a barrier island, 20 minutes, 30 minutes from where we are, and then cross by bridge. This is downtown Fort Myers.
I can hear what you're seeing there and what you're feeling. Talk to us about Naples right now.
Yeah, Tom, if you're hearing some clacking in the background, this is how strong the winds are. We are in a parking garage. We are safe, but there are some metal signs that are swinging just behind us. We can't show them to you right now, but that is the noise that you're probably hearing. And you can see the trees kind of whipping. They're leaning a little bit to the left here. We are not seeing much rain. We're kind of getting rain off and on. It's stopped at the moment, but we've lost power just behind us. This street light was on back here, so we've got a little bit more darkness than we saw earlier. Our hotel lost power.
How do you... The system's moving 15, 16 miles per hour over the past couple of hours, but not fast enough to kind of get folks that have already been sitting in this part of the eye wall in those rain bands for a prolonged period. So we're likely talking multiple, maybe a foot and a half of rain here by the time this is all said and done in some of these spots. Now, Sarasota, you're on the backside of that, of course, Tom, where the winds are onshore. You're getting those onshore winds, so the storm surge has been the big story with this system in a lot of spots, and yes, Tampa Bay dodged it, but Sarasota and points south, we are seeing places like Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, all dealing with impressive storm surge. We're talking 5, 6, maybe 8 feet of storm surge right now. The problem is we don't have a whole lot of sensors in that region.
Out the storm until it's safe to go outside. So we're talking about 4 or 5 a.m. We're not going to leave this structure. Thankfully, it's concrete, and we can deal with it.
Feels like it's sitting in. I'm wondering if you're feeling that too.
Yeah, Jesse, when we had that little dicey situation with the transformer exploding over our head,
everywhere.
I realized as we were walking back, I was like, oh, that's no longer rainwater, that's seawater. And yeah, we had seen the storm surge come in little by little. I agree with you. I think it might be receding for now. But again, once the high...
Is what we were thinking we were going to see with Milton. One of the storylines that I'll also be thinking about in the days.
Tornadoes that touched down in such a short period of time. Governor DeSantis has already reached out. He sent the National Guard, which is here on scene.
Another of the transformers exploding. We've been seeing the same thing here on the Atlantic coast. Transformers popping
Did he
on
just
the horizon.
say
There is
a
a
neighbor?
curfew in place. There's also a mandatory evacuation order in place for this part of Daytona Beach, and you can see why, because we are just now starting to get some of the strongest part of the storm, and we expect that the worst of it, Tom, is going to be over the next 2 or 3 hours.
Chase, you know, we were trying to follow reports that there were possibly a tornado touchdown in Daytona. Was there anything to that report, or were those
Tornado touchdown in Daytona, y'all.
So far, what I was seeing, Tom, is we were seeing the traditional, you know, the stereotypical rotation on radar, and then the winds picked up really quickly here. We can actually walk over to the road a little bit and show you some of what we were seeing, because the winds have been so intense, pretty consistent, and then all of a sudden we saw those swirling winds. So it matched what I was seeing on the live radar, that we saw that rotation. Haven't been able to yet determine if it was a confirmed tornado, but here on the street, there's been a lot of, I'm about to lose my hat, there's been a lot of debris flying by, so we're going to stay here in the wind shadow to stay safe. But as that was happening, you could see things being picked up and tossed down the street here behind me, Tom.
Chase Kane, we appreciate you. Thank you. Please stay safe tonight. We want to speak to the sheriff of St. Lucie tonight, St. Lucie County. Sheriff, are you with us?
I'm here. How are you?
Good, good. We're in Sarasota, so it's a little hard for me to hear you at times, but I know you can hear me, so that's a good sign. Sheriff, first of all, I'm sorry. We've heard reports that some people have died because of the tornado that touched down in St. Lucie. Do you have any more information about what's happened there?
Yeah, so currently, right now, we're in 100% rescue mode.
Well, St. Lucie.
Our deputies are out there going through this neighborhood that was just devastated by these multiple tornadoes that touched down in such a short period of time. Governor DeSantis has already reached out. He said the National Guard is
I'll be
here
with
on
them
scene,
and their
as well as
families.
our partner from Jimmy Petronas. There's a search and rescue team out there. We've got about 200 people searching through this rubbish. We can confirm that there's been multiple fatalities. But again, we haven't even seen the effects of Hurricane Milton yet. Right now, we're focused on, no matter how the storm comes, we're going to rescue as many people as we can.
I'm sorry that your brave men and women are dealing with that at this hour, especially when there's a hurricane that is just ripping across Florida. To give our viewers an understanding of where you are, you're just
Drop down to 105.
Florida. St. Lucie is a special place. It's a wonderful community. I've been there several times.
Not getting
I do want to ask you, how are your teams able to conduct these rescue operations?
125 miles an hour,
or
guys.
are they battling the elements as well?
Listen, the men and women of the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office, the fire district, the municipalities here, as well as the EOC members that are out there in excavators going through, they're going to do everything we possibly can to save as many lives as we can, whether this storm comes or not. So there's people out there that need help. Our deputies are out there. The National Guard is already here. They were here within an hour. Specialized search and rescue teams are here. We're not stopping until we rescue everybody that needs rescuing.
It's the right attitude to have, Sheriff. I do want to ask you, did the tornadoes take your community by surprise? Was there any warning whatsoever, or did they just sort of appear, pop up, and just cause complete devastation?
Well, we know that the hurricanes, the feeder brands kick out tornadoes. We don't normally see tornadoes here on the Treasure Coast. Unfortunately, I don't know if you saw the reports. This whole thing started off, my actual sheriff's office, a 10,000 square foot red iron structure that was housing all of our high water rescue vehicles and our branded vehicles, was hit by a tornado 50 yards away from where we were, and it completely wiped it out.
Look at
We
that.
were outside pulling out as much high water rescue vehicles as we can out of that.
These cars are all
I'm talking
total.
about tens of millions of dollars worth of damage. As we're there, all of a sudden in a 20-minute period, we've got reports of 17 confirmed tornadoes that just destroyed our community. Now, there's been over 100 residences that are completely destroyed, and we don't even have the hurricane here yet with the sustained winds. Those other neighborhoods, we've checked, they're good. All life was taken care of. So right now we're focusing in a 55 and older community that's mainly consisted of modular homes that, I mean, you wouldn't even recognize it. I'm not sure how strong tornadoes are rated, but I can tell you this, there was cars lifted and flipped upside down, moved hundreds of yards. I can tell you that there was nothing left to some of these places but foundations, and these whole trailers were moved, 10, 15 rolls. I mean, you can't even recognize it. This path of destruction is like nothing.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, tornadoes are more powerful than hurricanes. They cause so much destruction in that line of the tornado. It's hard to believe. Is your 911 system still up and running? Is that still functioning?
No, everything's functioning. This is strictly down. I mean, you can literally see the path of where this went and where these multiple tornadoes went. It just left complete devastation. Our community's out here. We're going to rescue whoever needs rescue. We're not going to stop. Again, we have the greatest governor. We're in Florida. We're resilient. We're going to continue to search them. Whether Milton comes or not, our deputies and our staff is going to be out there rescuing everyone who needs rescuing through the storm.
Sheriff, we thank you for your time. I know it's been a wild, sad, and dangerous night for you. I appreciate you updating our viewers on what's happening in St. Lucie County. We're going to be thinking about your community. We're going to follow what's happening there. We're going to keep you in our prayers tonight.
These hurricanes
Thank
were
you guys, and
alive so many
the rest of
people,
Florida.
taking so many lives.
Yeah. We are continuing our coverage here in Sarasota of Hurricane Milton. Just behind me, we have been dealing with hours of hurricane force winds, a storm surge that seems to be stabilizing, which is a bit of good news. The hurricane force winds, though, won't stop. It has been continuous over the last 2 hours. The eye passed over us. It was calm. It was quiet. And then suddenly it was chaos. And it's been that way for the last few hours. We still have about an hour to 2 hours to go as we continue to cover Hurricane Milton striking Sarasota and the Gulf region, cutting across Florida right now as a Category 2 hurricane. We're going to stay live on the air as we broadcast here on NBC News Now. Stay for the most comprehensive coverage. We have reporters fanned out across the state. Live reports coming up right after this short break. Stay with us.
That we've been so concerned about with all of that heavy rain kind of just sitting over the St. Pete and Tampa area is starting to shift a little farther to the east as Milton continues to work across the state. So that means that this is going to be extending, and what you're going to notice here as the night goes on, this extends farther east as Milton works closer to Orlando, works closer to Daytona Beach. Here's where the center of it is right now. So again, on the northern side of that center, as it works up towards Titusville, Daytona Beach area, that's where the heaviest of the rain is going to be. And we've seen impressive totals already, over a foot in some spots. And we've seen 5 inches of rain in 1 hour in St. Petersburg. So that just tells you how robust that area of rain is. And as it moves across the state, it's going to continue to cause those problems. Notice where the heaviest of it is right now. It was centered closer to Tampa. Now we're talking just to the north and west of Winter Haven, where you have those deepest of pink kind of returns on the radar. This is going to be along I-4 here for at least the next couple of hours as this works a little farther to the east. Notice where the center of it is. That onshore flow is going to continue for folks south of that, so we're still going to be dealing with the onshore flow for a little while longer, Sarasota and points south.
The high risk
but that
was
offshore
the
flow will
pink,
continue north of
moderate
that. So
risk is
no
the
surge
burgundy
issues, but
with the
definitely
red.
the flooding concern remains from the Daytona
Slight
area all the
risk
way to the
is
Tampa
the
area
blue,
as we
and
gear
the
up for that
green
honestly
is
catastrophic and life-threatening flooding to
marginal
expand
risk.
across the state as the system works to the east. Notice where some of the highest amounts are here as we get into the day,
So it looks like
tomorrow,
the
like for
worst
Thursday.
part
We're
is
talking
going to
over 10
be
inches of rain. Some of those
Daytona,
highest totals, Tom, will be upwards of 18 inches.
Orlando.
And that expanding wind field means destruction on top of it. As the center of it moves to the east and northeast, that means that so does the damaging winds along with the heavy rain threat.
All right, Angie, last one for us tonight. Angie, we appreciate you. Thank you for keeping us updated and explaining what we're seeing and experiencing here on the ground with the radar and with the science. We do appreciate that. I want to get over to
he said
Stephanie
he's in
Goss, my friend and
Sarasota,
colleague who is live in Tampa for us tonight.
and
Stephanie,
that's
talk to us
at
about what
Fort
you're
Myers
experiencing
up
there.
at the top. It's
Sure, Tom.
11:03.
You know, it's been hours now of very heavy wind
11:03
and
that
very
night.
heavy rain.
Well,
And although the
11:04
rain
now.
has let up just a little bit, it is still coming down. But what you're really seeing here is what makes a hurricane so dangerous. We are in a parking garage, Tom. We're about 3 stories up in a parking garage, and we've had to move around it because the wind has been moving around. And what that means for damage is that you've got things bending this way and then suddenly bending that way, and we're seeing trees break, we're seeing lights flicker and go off, even a transformer in the background. We've seen that
outside, and as you can see, the winds are whipping really rough out here. The power has been lost. We're staying at a hotel nearby. We lost power for about 30 minutes there. The power did kick back on, but the street lights that we saw here just outside of this parking garage, they have now gone down. We're seeing a patrol officer here on the street just driving around, but the streets here in Naples have been empty for several hours. That's because the city asked people to not be on the roadways, and I think people are heeding that. Several people we spoke with earlier this week said that they were leaving, especially those people that were in the evacuation zones, zones A and B. Those were the cities most, or the areas most vulnerable to one, flooding, and 2, storm surge. So we're going to have to check in with them tomorrow to see how they are doing, because there's one particular pocket.
Everything that we're feeling here in Sarasota on the ground, as we're still feeling some hurricane force winds, Angie. You know, you've been tracking this hurricane, you've been tracking the storm surge, and tonight, even the threat of tornadoes and some deadly ones that have made landfall here in Florida.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Tom, it doesn't look like any of those, those threats are going to subside all that much. The good news is that we no longer have any tornado watches that are in effect, but we'll, of course, keep an eye on how things escalate here as that system works across. We know with the circulation of the
flood
system, we
watch,
could see a spin up or two. So that's the good news. The bad news is all the other
flood
impacts that we've been telling you about for
warning
days and days,
in
they unfortunately are developing
flood
and unfolding
emergency
in a lot
in
of
the
spots. So
peak.
let's start with the flash flood concern that we have right now. A flash flood emergency has been expanded into portions of Polk City, Plant City, Zephyr Hills. It initially was just confined to the Tampa, Clearwater, Ruskin, Bradenton area. Now that has, of
Oh,
course,
now it's spread out.
expanded because the system is on the move, and we've seen just incredible rainfall happening and unfolding. Specifically, places like St. Pete, 5 inches of rain in 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock time frame. That's 1 in 1,000-year kind of rain event. It is unprecedented for us to see these kinds of things developing in such a quick time period, and we likely will see that continue, that same trend continue here as the system works to the north and east. And it's going to be kind of slicing right through the heart of Florida. Notice Cat 2 still at this hour, likely remaining at least a Cat 2 or maybe a Cat 1 here by the time it works into the Space Coast area. But Winter Haven up into Orlando, Titusville, Daytona Beach all have the potential to see some very heavy rainfall. Some of those spots are already starting to see it ramp up. Notice Orlando, we're getting into some of the heaviest of that rain. Notice the pinks that you see in the reds just to the north and west of Winter Haven. And by the way, we're seeing some strong wind gusts in those same areas. So incredible rain, strong wind gusts, and this is going to be something that continues here as we get through the evening and night hours and go into the overnight and into early tomorrow morning as the system starts to work.
From one tornado, Fort Pierce, okay, that's the east side of the state. Governor DeSantis earlier today was talking about 19
Get a hide
tornadoes that have
behind
touched down in his
that,
estimation. They haven't been surveyed yet.
that
There's got to
building.
be likely
It's
dozens
got to
of
be
them
really
in reality
bad wind.
that have actually occurred in Florida, and we don't know how many of those led to, sadly, fatalities. You just extrapolate. As I stare through a black space right now, 1.6 million people in the state of Florida with no power at the moment. So you have a power crisis. You could have certainly a water and sewage crisis tomorrow. We'll find out how well protected those pieces of critical infrastructure were. We saw this play out with Helene just the last week.
Never
When you
19
don't have
over
water,
now.
how that impacts
At that
communities
time.
as a result of just so much water. It's damaging infrastructure. So that's all something that needs to be figured out. And then the shelters. I mean, you have 100,000 plus people situated in shelters right now. Shelters, can you imagine if there hadn't been these mass evacuations, the kind of situation that we'd be looking at? So that's sort of, in a nutshell, what we're seeing. But God,
That's Sarasota.
we are getting hit once again with some pretty powerful winds. Our car
Strong. I would argue maybe they've come down just slightly over the last 20, 30 minutes. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking the same thing, Tom. It definitely feels like the highs are lower than what we were feeling a short time ago. I can also tell you the water level is still receding below us, and I want to have our photographer go over there. I don't know if you can make it out on TV, and Tom, if you turn around, you might see it too. It's now the taillights. We had headlights a moment ago. There's a car that appears to be driving on the causeway toward the barrier island. We know police had suspended operations earlier.
What the
I
heck?
don't think
This
we had
one
ever
running
gotten a
around.
complete ending to all EMS calls for the county level, but I know the city police had been suspending operations, and I just can't fathom where someone is going to get driving on that causeway. I know it does get elevated, Tom, so theoretically they get above the floodwaters from the storm surge, but and the debris is flying again across the deck. We can hear it scraping. That continues to be the story for us here, Tom, and this is just right a microcosm of what's got to be flying around this whole area.
Literally, where are they trying to go in that
headlights and
weather?
taillights.
That's
We saw them
crazy.
early on the backside of the eye. I think we've seen far fewer, but the idea that a car is out there right now, first responder or not, is pretty remarkable to me. And what you and Sam were just discussing about, the insurance and the infrastructure around voting and just getting life back together here. We're just past the 2-year anniversary of Hurricane Ian, which obviously was most devastating south of us in the Fort Myers area.
Of up to 120 miles per hour. Nearly 800,000 people are already without power. Storm surge warnings are in effect up and down the coast as some parts could see up to 15 feet of rising water tonight. Now, this is on top of a record-breaking number of dangerous tornadoes
Went back up
through
to
the center of Florida throughout this
150
chaotic
miles
day.
an hour. It
Dozens
went
of
up, you
twisters
guys.
through communities
And the wind gust is at 150 now. Dang, I thought it was going down. It went up.
Again, that is ahead of the hurricane. Some areas already reporting roofs torn apart and people hurt. There were more than 100 tornado warnings today, the most ever in Florida in a single day. We will have special coverage over the next 2 hours tracking Hurricane Milton as it makes landfall. Our team of correspondents are on the ground all across Florida, and top story anchor Tom Yamas will be guiding us through these critical hours as he rides through the hurricane from the ground zero of Sarasota County. His team is repositioning as we speak. But first, for an overview of what so much of Florida is facing right now, let's start with NBC News meteorologist Angie Lastman. Angie, we've got that super destructive eye wall that has inched closer to where Tom and his team have been. Now he is inside of that eye wall. What are conditions looking like all around Florida right now?
Hey there, Gotti. Yeah, so the thing is, if you're inside of the eye wall, all is calm. We saw some reports that it's even a little humid. You start to hear really everything that's going on around you, but it's that eye wall that is so destructive that
Right,
we're so
you
concerned
guys.
about when it comes to
Thank
wind
you for
damage, when it comes to the
coming.
rainfall,
Y'all
and
have
of
a
course, on
great
the backside of
evening.
that system,
You
all of the
gotta go
water being
home.
shoved up against the
You
coast.
gotta get
We did
out of
have
here.
landfall. You mentioned it
See
in
ya.
Siesta Key just a little while
Bye.
ago. This system is going to continue cruising to the north and east here as basically the next 12 hours goes on. But notice how aggressive this band of rain is set up across parts of Tampa, Bradenton, and points north of that, St. Pete included in that, the Tampa area. We're watching the eye kind of right around here. The south of that, that's where we're starting to see the storm surge really ramp up. It's been ongoing. It's going to continue to get worse here as we go through at least the next 2 hours for areas Sarasota and points south towards Venice. Even Naples recording 5 to 6 feet of storm surge already. Those numbers are going to continue.
Acting like you didn't see where I'm from, but every move I made, I was meant to shine. You can try to act blind, but you saw the signs. I rose from the dirt, stayed on my grind. Now they're looking at me like, damn, she divine. You knew I was the one, don't pretend. Played stupid, but you felt it in the end. I see the way you looking now, switching sides, but you can't erase the truth, don't even try. You knew I had it, you knew I'd fly. Now you gotta watch me as I touch the sky. You knew, don't act brand new. You saw the vision, you felt it too. Played stupid, now you see it's true. I'm the chosen one, I always flew. You knew, don't act brand new. You felt the power, but you stayed mute. Now it's too late, I made my move. I'm the chosen one, you knew the truth. Every word I spoke, it hit deep. They acted like they didn't see the queen beneath, but I stayed focused, never let it slide. I kept pushing while they tried to hide. Now they trying to get close, wanna claim me, but where was the love when they couldn't see? I was destined to rise, you always knew, but you kept it low. Now look at my view, I see the way you looking now, switching sides, but you can't erase the truth, don't even try. You knew I had it, you knew I'd fly. Now you gotta watch me as I touch the sky. You knew, don't act brand new. You saw the vision, you felt it too. Played stupid, now you see it's true. I'm the